In a market, the price of an agricultural good is determined by how the supply and the demand relationship interact with each other, specifically where these two lines intersect. And where those two lines intersect is known as the equilibrium price. It's also known as the market clearing price because it actually clears the market. Now, the equilibrium price is that single price where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. That's where the amount that producers are willing to supply at that specific price, remember that's quantity supplied, is equal to the amount that is being demanded by buyers at that single specific price. That's also where the two lines intersect. So if we look over here at this graph where these two lines intersect, where the supply curve and this demand curve intersects, that's where equilibrium price is going to be. It's going to be right here at this $2.15. That's where the quantity that is being supplied equals the quantity demanded. It's also known as the market clearing price. The reason that it's the market clearing price is because all of the demand for that good, or all of the quantity that's being demanded and all the quantity that's being supplied, has equalized. It's cleared the market. There is no extra supply at that price, and there's no extra demand at that price because quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at this in a table form and then also in a graph form. So if we look at this table right here, we look and we see that we have the prices, the quantity demanded, quantity supplied, and then we also have this condition and pressure that we're going to talk about in the next video. So if we look right here, if you remember back to that demand relationship, you remember that it's a relationship between prices and quantity. And then we have that little table where it has prices and quantity, and this is the amount of quantity that's being demanded at single specific prices. So these first two columns show that demand relationship. The first and the third column shows that supply relationship, that as prices change, what happens to the quantity that's being supplied. And if we go through each one of these rows, it shows us the quantity demanded and the quantity that is being supplied. As we go through this, remember that demand is a relationship between price and quantity, and it is represented on a graph as a line showing that relationship between price and quantity. Supply does the exact same thing. So as we look through here, also remember that equilibrium price is where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So if we look at $1, we see that the quantity that's being demanded is at 15, and the quantity that's being supplied is at half a unit. So if we find $1 on this graph, the amount that's being supplied is here. The quantity supplied is here. Quantity demanded is way out here. Those two are not equal to each other. Matter of fact, they're very far apart. And as we go through here, what we're looking for is the point where quantity supplies equals quantity demanded. And that actually occurs at $2.15, where the quantity supplied is $7.75 units. Quantity supplied, or quantity demanded, is 7.75 units. That's actually where these two lines intersect. Right here at about $2.15, and then about 7.75 units. At that point, at $2.15, producers are willing to supply 7.75 units. At $2.15, consumers or buyers are willing to buy 7.75 units. The amount that they're willing to buy equals the amount that producers are willing to sell. The market's clear. There's no extra demand there. There's no extra supply there. So the equilibrium price is where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. If quantity supplied does not equal quantity demanded, you're in what we either call a surplus or shortage that we'll talk about in the next video. Now, another thing that I want to bring to your attention, the difference between quantity supplied and supply, quantity demanded, and demand. If you remember that supply and demand are relationships. Quantity supplied, quantity demanded are a single point. They're one-dimensional. It is that one point at a single specific price. So as we look here, we say where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded is equilibrium. That's that equilibrium price. It's that market clearing price. But one thing to note is that where supply equals demand is not equilibrium. Actually, it's virtually impossible to have where supply equals demand. What that means is if supply equals demand, then those relationships are equal to each other. Well, we know that the demand relationship, this demand curve right here, is a downward sloping relationship. The supply curve is an upward sloping relationship. If we were to say that supply equals demand, then that means that these two lines would overlap over each other because the lines show a relationship. And if we were to say that supply equals demand, we would wind up having a graph where supply would equal demand, and those two lines would actually overlap over each other. That is impossible for that to happen. So if I ask you where equilibrium price is, do not put supply equals demand, because that is a relationship equals a relationship. It's not going to happen. Rather, it's where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, because that's showing that this is the amount that producers are willing to offer at that single specific price. It's equal to the amount that buyers are willing to purchase at that single specific price. That's where equilibrium occurs, not where supply equals demand.